No one believes me. Not my parents, my siblings, my friends, no one. I'm a tree surgeon, so basically I get called by people asking me to save their tree from dying, or to cut down dead trees. It's my passion, and I love my job. However, I did not enjoy my last tree job. No, I've had to take a couple of weeks off just to clear my head. It started off normal. I got a call from a fragile old lady saying that her tree is rotten and slowly falling down towards her house. I accepted the job and told her I'd be there in a couple days. I just needed to finish up a different job. I turned up, and from the outside everything seemed fine. It's a very big house for a little old lady, but I thought, if she earned it, why not? I parked my van up her driveway and got out to get all my climbing gear ready. Just as I stepped out of the van, I heard some noises coming from her house, like glass shattering, then a lot of deep voices shouting, followed by a long, lonely sounding scream. The only way I can describe this scream is like something you would hear from an insane asylum. I looked up to one of the top floor windows to see this old lady flailing her arms about like she was in an argument. I took one step forward and her head snapped in my direction. And the second she saw me, she darted out of view of the window, quicker than even I could do so. I knocked on her front door to announce myself as well to check to see if she was okay. After about 10 seconds, I hear a gentle voice say, "Stay there, I'm slow in my old age." Having seen what I just did, this made me smirk a bit. She finally arrived at the door to take me to the back garden so I could get started on the tree. On my way through the house, I looked around to see if somebody else was living there with her. The whole place was a complete mess. The floor was covered in feces, smashed glass, and, this may sound kind of funny, but baked beans. She led me outside and I pretended I didn't see anything, as she didn't seem to either, and I cracked on with my work. To be able to climb a tree, I needed a groundsman to ensure my safety, but he didn't turn up, so I was pretty upset. I started to cut what I could from standing on the ground, and as I was doing this, I looked back at the house and saw the woman peering down at me with an expressionless look on her face. This freaked me out a bit, but I just put it down to another nosy customer. I kept looking up every couple minutes for the next 15 minutes to see if she was still there, and she was. She stood in the exact same position with the exact same look on her face. I got uncomfortable and smiled and waved. She burst out in unnatural laughter, her mouth wide open, doubled in size, and the noise she made was so unnatural that it sent shivers down my spine. She started to tap on the window with her index finger, while singing that funny farm song about somebody coming to take her away. That was the end of my job at this house. I packed up all my gear, hopped over her side gate, and got out of there. In my rearview mirror, I could see her sitting in the middle of the road, legs crossed, waving at me. My heart was beating out of my chest. I know it's a little old lady, but I've seen enough horror movies to know that you do not go around investigating. I got home and took the rest of the day off. I played some FIFA and just tried to forget about what happened. It was about 9 p.m. and I started to faintly hear that funny farm song. It was coming from the end of my driveway. I had told a couple of my friends about what happened, so I assumed it was just one of them trying to prank me. As soon as I heard the song, it hit a nerve and I stormed to the door. I swung the door open and saw the woman about 25 yards away from me holding a spoon, singing that stupid song. I'm scaring myself writing this down. I slammed my front door and locked it and stood on the other side for about 30 seconds, when curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to look through the peephole. Why? I don't know. As I looked through the peephole, my legs almost gave way from under me. All I could see was her eye staring back at me. I stayed there, just looking at her eye. I was too scared to look away in case she was suddenly gone when I looked back. The staring continued for about a minute when out of nowhere, she starts kicking and punching my door as hard as she could. I came away from the door trying to decide whether to get my bat and knock this lady out, or get my phone and call the police. The banging then stopped, so I went back to the door. She slowly walked away laughing. I haven't been able to work since. I just don't know what to do. No one believes me, and I don't think I'll forget about this for a very long time. This happened not too long ago when I was 14. It was the middle of summer, and I was spending the night at a friend's house. In total, there were 4 of us there that night. And in order to preserve confidentiality, I will refer to those friends as Jim, James, and Tom. The 4 of us had just come back to Jim's house after an hour of exercise at one of those trampoline jump places. It was late by the time we returned, but we all decided that the night was still young and to stay out for a while. Typical rambunctious teens, right? I remember checking my phone to see that it was 10 o'clock. Now, I was always very precautious when it came to venturing through the late hours of the night, especially in an unfamiliar area. I went along with the idea due to the facts that A. We were in a large group. B. Jim's neighborhood was well lit thanks to the great number of lampposts. And C. I knew that we were all carrying cell phones and we were fast runners just in case an emergency happened. I figured we'd be fine. That was my first mistake. After a good hour of walking through the illuminated upper-class boulevard and engaging in discussions that only the brain of a 14-year-old male teenager would think would be riveting, we came to the end of the street. A rather dilapidated metal gate stood before us in the obscene contrast from the modern look of the previous houses. A particularly foreboding dead-end sign stared at the 4 of us. Beyond the obstacle was a barren expanse of ground and dirt piles. It looked as if it was in its fetal stages of becoming a suburb. The 3 of us stopped in our tracks, but Jim oddly kept walking. I piped up. "Wait, Jim, we're leaving? But there's nothing out there, it's just a bunch of dirt." "No, there's another neighborhood back there." I pulled out my phone again and saw that it was already 11. No wonder my legs were starting to get tired. We had been walking for about an hour. Even though it was rather slow, my legs were still tired from jumping in the trampoline place earlier. Luckily, James added, "I don't know, dude, do you just want to go back to your place and chill? It is getting kind of late." Jim had already hopped the gate when he said, "Come on guys, don't be wusses, let's go." And so the 4 of us continued our journey into the next neighborhood. That was the second mistake. Now I need to mention the layout of this neighborhood because it'll be important later on. While Jim's neighborhood was practically just a giant circle, this place seemed to just be like one single street. Though this wasn't the only difference, it was the most important. As soon as I set foot on the dark gravel road, I knew something wasn't right. I wasn't sure what it was, but something just felt off. My senses probably can be attributed to the fact that this neighborhood was much darker. Compared to this, Jim's street might as well have been the red carpet. Not only were there not any streetlights, but it felt like all the previous bright stars had been blown out like candles, and the moon had been covered by a cloud, dense enough just to contrast its glowing beam. As we walked, I noticed that the energy just felt off. Like it was too quiet and we weren't supposed to be there. We were walking into an open crypt, and it was only a matter of time before the gravekeeper came for us trespassers. As we walked, it was apparent that our previous carefree and lax chatter had been replaced with silence. Though we began to see a faint light illuminating from a little ways ahead of us, we began to slowly regain our composure. As we neared it, it turned out that the light source was coming from a streetlight. And I also noticed that the seemingly one-way street had a left turn, and it was on this corner which the light sat. The strange thing about this corner was that, rather than it being a turn into another long street like the one we had been walking on, it simply turned into a house. No more houses accompanied it on either side of the road, which it literally ended right after this one house. We all thought this was peculiar and, in a way, kind of funny. So of course, when Jim suggested we ding dong ditch someone, we all knew what house to pick. Third mistake. The actual process of the ditch went perfectly. James, Tom, and I had hidden a bush on the property as Jim snuck up and delivered 3 startling blows to the front door. Almost immediately after the knock, a light turned on the inside of the upstairs window. The 4 of us took this as our cue to book it out of there. Though in the excitement and commotion of running away, we had made a wrong turn down the unfamiliar street rather than heading back in the direction that we came. After we had put some distance between us and the house, we all slowed our pace to a walk and began to laugh and exclaim about our encounter. All the anxiety present when entering the neighborhood was now replaced with the devious sense of pride from our mischievous accomplishment, and everyone was basking in the glory. Everyone, that is, except James. James had stopped walking and was turned around, pointing at someone behind us. Guys, is someone following us? My heart fell as I heard this sentence, and I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up as I turned and we all saw, to our horror, an old man standing directly underneath the streetlight. This was when I realized that turning the wrong way had been our fourth mistake. We now had this man in between us and the safety of Jim's neighborhood. The first thing that stuck out to me was the appalling fact that he appeared to be completely nude. The light from above him gave him a perfectly putrid perspective of the man's perverted parts. Wrinkles cascaded down sickly white arms and legs, contrasted by overgrown and unkempt hair. The only thing covering his nether region was his bulging stomach, which drooped down unnaturally far. Though what bothered me most was the fact that he had this uneasy smile. His grin contained teeth so yellow that I could observe them from roughly 75 yards away. The man stayed still and simply looked at us, his neck ever so slightly tilting awkwardly to one side. All four of us were frozen in place. After a solid minute, to our relief, the man turned away from us and began walking back towards his house. I breathed a small sigh of relief, but this calm was short-lived when I realized the man was walking backwards directly towards us. It didn't take long for the other three to see through the illusion, or the fact that he was gaining unnaturally quick. We bolted. Any soreness in my legs had disappeared as my mind took over. I began to run through a plan in my mind. I remember thinking that this neighborhood was most likely the same as Jim's, and eventually curled around in a full circle. No such luck. The four of us saw on the horizon the disheartening shape of another dead-end sign, but this time, it was followed by a forest area with plants too dense to fit through. We were trapped. At this point, we had begun to hear yelling behind us. I couldn't make anything out that he was saying, but it sounded oddly like a woman's voice. And I remember the threatening proximity of his calls made my eyes moisten with fear. I glanced back and saw that the man was still a ways behind us, but he was now turned around and sprinting as well. As we neared the dead end, I noticed that there were still houses on either side of us. Now I had a plan. I ran to the front of our group as we arrived at the gate and told everyone to follow me. We turned into the yard of the final house on the left side, seeing that the man was still about 4 houses away. I led us to the backyard where there was a row of tall pine trees and instructed everyone to put their hoods up. From our location, we could look in between the houses to see the side of the road the man was running on. Okay, I whispered. We will wait here and watch in between those houses. As soon as we see him pass, we book it through there and back to Jim's. Everyone seemed to agree with the plan, and then we all began watching and waiting. Not 2 minutes in, a shiver ran down my spine as we heard the same voice from before in the backyard with us. I now recognized that it was not a woman's voice, but rather a man's voice that was trying to go extremely high. Almost as if he was intimidating a sick and demented Mickey Mouse. He casually said,
"Do you want to come out? Or do I have to come and find you?"
Without any hesitation, we all switched into it and started sprinting as fast as we can. We didn't look back. We didn't say a word. We didn't stop running until we were safely back in Jim's garage. I never did figure out how the man caught up with us so fast, with how far away he was. Neither did we figure out why on the earth he was stark naked chasing little boys in the middle of the night. Though one thing I did learn was that I am never ding-dong ditching again. I live in a pretty nice neighborhood. It's not rich by any means, but it's on the newer side. Growing up, I had a best friend that I did everything with, and still to this day, we are best friends. His name's Kevin. We were probably between 12 and 13 at the time, and knew the woods around our house like the back of our hands. So on this day, we wanted to explore some of the woods that we haven't gotten to yet. We started off where we knew the area, and got deeper. As we were walking and goofing around and whatnot, we came upon something that stuck out. It was white, but dirty, and the closer we got, the more it looked like huge pieces of old rusted metal bent up and sticking out of the ground. Kevin ran right up to it and jumped on it, screaming to me that it was a car, which for 13-year-olds was pretty crazy to find in the woods. I was half tempted to stay right where I was, I didn't really have a good feeling about this, and we were definitely on somebody else's property, but curiosity overcame me. I looked hard and I could make out a house in the distance, which didn't make me feel great since this wouldn't have been the first time getting chased off somebody's property. The car was in decent shape surprisingly for being abandoned in the woods. Its back left tire was completely underground and it had a convertible top, but not by design, rather that it looked like it was cut right off cleanly. Kevin was sitting in it and I was kind of investigating the area and the car itself. We decided that we'd have to open up the trunk to see what was inside. We had no idea how to get in the trunk at this age, so of course we just started wailing on it with logs and trying to pry it open with sticks. After about 5 minutes of this, we were just adding dents to it, so we decided to give up and try to think of something else. In the distance, Kevin spotted a big rock, and we grabbed it and placed it on the trunk. We stood on it and dropped it a few times and eventually busted the trunk open. It smelled like musty iron and that smell you get when you go to an old person's house. Inside there was an old wooden container with some latches on it, and otherwise it was completely empty. It didn't even look dusty or dirt covered and was placed directly in the center and upright, which I remember finding very strange from all the dirt that came in when we opened it. We were making quite a lot of noise and I was starting to get paranoid, so I convinced Kevin to open the container back at my house. It seemed like it hadn't been unlatched in years. Even the latches were rusted up, so we had to use all of our strength to get the latches undone. Inside the box were some old black and white pictures of a young boy with long hair, blankly staring into the camera. A necklace with an upside down star and matches that must have been 10 years old at least. The spot we opened it was an area where a few other neighborhood kids built forts out of sticks behind a few houses, but still a pretty good ways into the woods. We hid our findings in our fort and left before dark, eager to tell the rest of the kids the following day. The next day came and we gathered the other kids to show them our discoveries. When we got down there, every fort but mine and Kevin's was collapsed, so immediately the other kids think we sabotaged them. We blame it on the older kids of the neighborhood or something and go to the fort to see our matches and all the boxes burnt to a crisp. The pictures of the boys are now in between sticks and all over the floor of the fort, with burn holes in the eyes of each picture. I'm completely creeped out and can't even explain anything to the other kids. They just decided to destroy our fort since they thought it was us in the first place. We didn't even care at the time, we were just confused where everything went. We start convincing ourselves that someone must be messing with us and stole the jewelry since it must be worth money. We took the pictures and threw them in the container in the swamp nearby and searched around a bit for the necklace. Nothing. A couple weeks go by and Kevin and his dad invite me to go to the gym that he teaches at just to mess around while he gets stuff done. As we get there and I hop out of the van, I drop something. I look down and it's a necklace with an upside down star. I yelled at Kevin and we start apologetically telling his dad the story. He laughs at us and throws it down the sewer, telling us that we have nothing to worry about and nothing's coming after us. Later that night I was a bit on edge and my parents were out in their bowling league, so I decided to stay the night at Kevin's. We needed an extra controller to play Xbox, so we walked to my house to get one. It was locked up, but I could get through the garage door. At the time I had a big 200-pound German Shepherd named Chance. As soon as I walked in with Kevin behind me, a deep chilling voice said,
"Welcome home, Josh."
I grabbed Chance, who was right there, and ran crying. We got Kevin's dad, who checked every part of my house out to find nothing at all. Since the day we found the container, Kevin and I both have had experience like this happen in our lives consistently. I repressed this memory until I recently started smoking with Kevin. We found a killer smoke spot that was in the same woods, but you couldn't turn off the busy street and get back to it because there was somehow a trail that led pretty far back there. We're 24 now, so I guess you could say we're adults. The other week we walked a little further from where we parked our car. We smoked and then started walking back. I always keep my stuff in my trunk, so I popped it open and put it in there. My hand swiped the hoodie that was nearby, and underneath it were the pictures of the boy. The same pictures, but with no burn holes. I haven't thought about that in years. I had an anxiety attack and freaked out along with Kevin. We burned the pictures and buried them. I don't need this popping up in my life anymore. I think it's safe to say I'll have a good few months with no sleep. I love windows. I love seeing the world around me, letting the natural light in. I love feeling connected to nature, even when I'm inside. When I was a kid, I used to leave my window in my bedroom open all the time. It was so nice to be in my room working on something and still be able to hear the birds and feel the breeze and smell the fresh cut grass. I would sleep with my window open also, falling asleep to the crickets and the frogs and the sounds of the night. I loved it. Then, I went away to college in the middle of a much bigger city than the one that I'd come from. I like the city, don't get me wrong, but the noise and pollution gets old sometimes. It didn't matter. Dorm and apartment windows don't open. Mine didn't anyway. After college, I began working at a publishing agency. I really did love it. The people I worked with were great, and even my boss was laid back and easy to work with. Plus, who doesn't love to be surrounded by books all day? It was decent money as well, and I was fairly happy. In my heart, though, I knew I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to write, not edit or proofread or spend all day focusing on somebody else's work. I wanted to be doing my own. Luckily for me, my boss, also a writer, understood exactly where I was coming from. She allowed me to work from home and even agreed to read my work and give me comments and critiques. I knew I would never get any writing done in the city, surrounded by so many distractions though. So I took all of my savings and put down a down payment on a secluded cabin at the base of the mountains. It was right out of a novel itself, I mean really, not too big, not too small. It was right on a lake, and it was perfect. From my back deck, I could watch the sunrise on the mountaintops as the early morning mist slowly faded from the lake. I could hear frogs and crickets and smell the fresh-cut grass and morning dew. And I could finally raise my windows again. My home was full of windows. They were everywhere. The thing that made my house so noteworthy, so expensive, was the panoramic view it offered. What it offered me was a step back in time to my childhood. The first month that I lived in the house was absolutely amazing. I got so much writing done in such a short amount of time. Not to mention, the month was filled with sweet mountain breezes, strawberry lemonade, and fresh veggies from my garden, dips in the lake, and even lightning bugs. It was the first time I had seen lightning bugs in 8 years. I felt so at home. Unfortunately, that would not last. I think the first time I realized something was off was one morning about a month ago. I noticed a handprint on the patio door as I was in the kitchen getting my coffee. This, of course, wasn't alarming to me at the time. I'm not really a neat freak, so I just figured I had touched the door and hadn't noticed the print I left. I cleaned it off and thought nothing more of it as I got ready for the day. I spent the day at a farmer's market up the mountain with a friend. Upon returning home, I noticed a second print, this time on the front door. This one was different though. It looked like the side of a hand pressed up against the glass. I was certain I had just shoved the door with the side of my hand while bringing something in or maybe letting the dog out. I cleaned it off with the window cleaner and decided while I was at it to clean all the doors and windows, just to have it done. I forgot about it after that. About 2 weeks later, I woke up around 3 a.m. I'm not a light sleeper, so I laid there in the dark, listening for what may have woken me up. The house was silent, completely still. And then I heard it. Footsteps. Very light, barely there, but still audible in the silence. And then they stopped. I was wide awake by that point, yet it still took me a few seconds to realize where the footsteps had stopped. They were right outside my window. My open window. My breath hitched in my throat and I tried to be as still as possible. I closed my eyes and prayed that my familiar childhood idea of, if I can't see them, they can't see me, held true. I'm not sure how long they stood there, staring at me. It felt like hours before I could hear the footsteps walk away. I heard the familiar squeaking of the steps, and then silence. I continued to lay there, unmoving, too scared to even think, until the dawn broke and my room began to fill with light. My alarm on my phone went off at 6:30, and that was when I was determined it was safe to look. I slowly rose, my blood ice, as I feared what might be standing there. But there was nothing. I made a mad dash to the window, slamming it shut and locking it before closing the blinds and the curtains. I called the police, but there wasn't much that they could do other than tell me to keep my doors and windows shut and locked. They took some photos and interviewed my neighbors, but that was about it. The rest of the week passed without incident. I was finally starting to think the whole thing was just a freak occurrence. A drunk guy or a homeless person, someone who probably meant me no harm. I stopped pulling my curtains so tightly at night and started trying to enjoy the cabin again. Like tonight, I'm sitting at my kitchen table, writing. All my windows are up and I can feel the cool mountain breeze and smell the sweet smell of late summer air. And hear the soft breathing of the person standing at my window behind me. And I can just see his reflection on my computer screen.